Dangerous individuals can be found in every corner of the country, but Florida is home to some of the most chilling cases of all. From a mother who took the lives of her 4 children, to a man who lived a disturbing double life, preying on the vulnerable. These are the most notorious inmates in Florida awaiting their final punishment. Tina LaSonia Brown was born in 1970 and lived in a mobile home park in Escambia County, Florida. She shared a small space with her daughter, 16-year-old Brittany Angelique Miller, and their neighbor, Heather Trinny Lee, who was 27 at the time. The 3 women saw each other often. Sometimes they got along. Other times, not so much. Tension was always close by. Things took a turn when a personal conflict started to build. Brittany believed another young woman, Adriana Zimmerman, was getting too close to her boyfriend. Whether or not it was true didn't seem to matter. The situation caused a lot of anger and stirred up emotions between the women. One day, Tina invited Adriana over to talk. She said she wanted to fix things, but when Adriana arrived at the trailer, it wasn't a peaceful conversation waiting for her. It was an ambush. The 3 women targeted her, then forced her into a car, drove her out to a remote area in the woods, and set her on fire. They left her there. Despite her critical condition, Adriana managed to escape and seek help. She provided authorities with vital details about what had happened and who was responsible. Sadly, Adriana passed away 16 days later due to the severity of her burns. The investigation was quick, and the legal proceedings that followed were intense. Tina LaSonia Brown was convicted of first-degree premeditated homicide and sentenced to capital punishment. Brittany Angelique Miller, at just 16 years old, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in confinement without the possibility of release. Heather Trinny Lee was charged with second-degree homicide and received a 25-year confinement sentence through a plea agreement. As of 2024, Tina LaSonia Brown remains the only female inmate on death row in Florida. She is currently held at the Lowell Correctional Institution. Next up is a man who's lived a double life, but not in the way you think. Daniel Owen Conahan Jr. was born in 1954 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and moved to Punta Gorda, Florida, as a child. From an early age, he struggled deeply with his identity, particularly around his sexuality. His parents disapproved, turning to psychiatric intervention in hopes of fixing him, leaving Conahan with emotional scars that ran deep. Reflecting later in life, he would say, being gay is part of God's plan too. In 1977, Conahan enlisted in the U.S. Navy and was stationed at Naval Station Great Lakes in Illinois. But his time in the military was short-lived. Reports of inappropriate behavior toward fellow servicemen and a later physical altercation brought his service to an early end. After his discharge, Conahan spent over a decade in Chicago before returning to Punta Gorda in 1993 to care for his aging parents. In 1995, he earned his licensed practical nurse certification, graduating at the top of his class from the Charlotte Vocational Technical Center. By day, he worked at Charlotte Regional Medical Center. By night, he frequented local gay bars, quietly navigating a double life that no one yet suspected would lead to something far more sinister. Between 1994 and 1996, a series of unsettling incidents shook the Charlotte County area. These became known as the Hog Trail murders, with the victims mostly being transients and gay men, individuals often overlooked, and all looking for work or stability. Daniel Conahan knew the area well, especially the US 41 corridor stretching from North Port to Fort Myers. That knowledge gave him an edge, and he used it to find and lure vulnerable people. His approach was calculated. He'd offer rides, sometimes under the pretense of job opportunities. Victims were taken, harmed, and left along remote areas of the so-called Hog Trail. The eerie pattern quickly caught the attention of investigators, who suspected a serial offender was behind it all. Then, in 1994, the case took a turning point. Conahan targeted a man named Stanley Burden, tying him to a tree and nearly choking him. But Burden managed to survive, and his testimony would become a key piece in unraveling the case. By May 1996, witness statements and physical evidence began to point to Conahan. A survivor's escape from Conahan's vehicle, which had become stuck in a dirt road, added urgency to the investigation. When investigators searched Conahan's home, they found evidence that further linked him to the incidents. On July 3, 1996, Conahan was arrested. His trial began in 1999, with the prosecution relying heavily on Stanley Burden's testimony, where he identified Conahan as his assailant. Despite attempts by the defense to undermine Burden's account, Judge William Blackwell deliberated for just 25 minutes before finding Conahan guilty. On December 10, 1999, Daniel Conahan was sentenced to the most severe punishment allowed by law, along with an additional 15-year sentence for forcibly holding his victim. Today, Conahan remains behind bars at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, where he continues to serve his sentence. Next, we turn to Rory, whose calculated actions is one of the darkest chapters in Florida's history. Rory Enrique Conde was born in 1965 in Barranquilla, Colombia, and from the start, his life was marked by hardship. His mother died from tetanus when he was just 6 months old, leaving Rory and his sister Nellie to be raised by their grandmother, Maria Rojas. At age 12, the siblings moved to Miami to live with their father, Gustavo Conde, an airline worker with a new wife. Rory's relationship with his father was cold and distant. He felt emotionally neglected. In 1985, Rory met Carla. The two married in 1987 and had 2 children, Rory Jr. and Nydia. At first, the family lived with Carla's parents, and Rory worked a steady job at a lumber company. But beneath the surface, things were far from stable. Carla endured repeated harm, kicked, punched, even threatened with a firearm. Their marriage became a cycle of separation and reconciliation, and the final breaking point came when Carla discovered a videotape of Rory with another woman. After Carla left him and filed for divorce in 1994, Rory began to spiral. His behavior grew darker. He started spying on women at night and seeking out intimate workers, acting on urges that had long been simmering beneath the surface. If you found this story compelling so far, make sure to like and subscribe. So, on the outside, Rory still seemed like a regular guy, working as a building supplies salesman at Booker & Company, known among coworkers as polite and helpful. Between September 1994 and January 1995, Rory was involved in a series of harmful incidents with 6 women, mostly working as intimate workers along the Tamiami Trail in Miami. His method was similar for each victim. He would lure them, harm them, and then use force to stop them from breathing. He left cryptic messages with some of the bodies, seemingly taunting the authorities. One message read, 3rd, I will call Dwight Chan. 10, see if you can catch me. The investigation into these incidents involved over 1,000 possible suspects and cost nearly $2 million. A breakthrough came when residents of the Trail Heights Gardens apartment complex reported seeing a woman who was bound and naked in Rory's apartment. When police arrived, they found Gloria Maestre, a 30-year-old woman still bound. Rory was coincidentally returning from a court hearing on a different matter when he noticed police at his apartment. He fled, but was apprehended 5 days later at his grandmother's house in Hialeah. During questioning, Rory confessed to his involvement in these events, stating that the end of his marriage played a role in his actions. He also claimed to have engaged in inappropriate acts with one of his victims. Although his defense attorneys attempted to suppress his confession, arguing that he wasn't properly informed of his rights, prosecutors pointed out that he had been treated leniently during the questioning, including being allowed to call family members and take breaks. In October 1999, Rory stood trial for the first case, and over time he was convicted for each of the others. He was sentenced to a long-term sentence for each case. In 2001, as part of a plea deal, he pleaded guilty to the other 5 cases, receiving 5 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. This deal meant he would not be able to challenge his sentences. Rory's punishment was later reviewed after the 2016 Supreme Court ruling in Hurst v. Florida, which determined that the state's procedures for imposing the most severe penalty were unconstitutional. As a result, his sentence was overturned, and as of March 2025, Rory is awaiting a new sentencing. Next is a case Florida won't be forgetting anytime soon, a story so disturbing. Lucius Boyd was born in 1959 in Broward County, Florida. His criminal history is long and deeply troubling. In 1993, he was involved in an incident where a man was fatally injured. Boyd claimed self-defense, and though he was acquitted, it marked the beginning of a far darker path. The most disturbing case came in 1998. On April 14, 1999, Boyd was charged in connection to the passing of 21-year-old Dania DaCosta. Her body was found hidden beneath a brown sheet, a shower curtain, and a black trash bag, an attempt to cover up what had happened. She had suffered a severe head injury, and the case was ruled a homicide. Additional injuries to her chest, arms, and hands pointed to a struggle, and signs of possible unwanted intimate contact added another horrifying layer to the case. Investigators uncovered key evidence tying Boyd to the scene, including tire tracks found in the sand and mud near DaCosta's body. His prior history and the forensic findings quickly pointed to him as a suspect, leading to his arrest and trial. The courtroom proceedings were intense. The prosecution presented a strong case, combining physical evidence from the scene with Boyd's criminal background and expert forensic testimony. Despite efforts by the defense to challenge the claims, the jury found Boyd guilty on June 21, 2002. He received capital punishment, and in 2023, nearly 25 years after the incident, Boyd was indicted for the unalivement of Eileen Trupner, a case that had been unresolved for many years. Mesak Damas, born on July 2, 1976 in Haiti, is connected to one of Florida's most heartbreaking family tragedies. Growing up in a household plagued by poverty, he faced challenges from an early age. These circumstances played a role in shaping a life that would tragically result in a horrifying event. At 19, Damas left Haiti, seeking a fresh start in the United States. By 2009, he was living in Collier County, Florida, and working as a chef at a local ale house. On the outside, he appeared to have a stable job, but his personal life was far from peaceful. In January 2009, just months before the tragedy, Damas was arrested for an altercation with his wife, Guerline, stemming from suspicions of her unfaithfulness. On September 18, 2009, Damas committed an act that would forever change his family and community. He took the lives of his wife, Guerline, and their 5 children, Meshach, 9 years old, Maven, 6 years old, Marvin, 5 years old, Megan, 3 years old, and Morgan, just 19 months old. Each of them suffered from the same horrific act. After the incident, Damas fled to Haiti. He arrived there the same day, telling U.S. Marshals later that he had gone to say goodbye to his family, acknowledging his actions and wanting to escape the guilt that weighed on him. On September 23, 2009, Damas was found in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and was taken into custody. He confessed to the tragic event, saying, "I know what I did was wrong. Bad spirits made me do it." He also expressed a desire to face the harshest possible punishment. While in jail, Damas displayed erratic behavior. He stopped using his legal name and instead referred to himself as COG, Child of God. He refused to eat, shower, or participate in legal proceedings. Psychiatric assessments revealed that he had a strong religious obsession and a tendency to manipulate others. Despite these signs of mental strain, he was deemed fit to stand trial in 2011. On September 5, 2017, after years of legal proceedings, Damas pleaded guilty to 6 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. He chose to represent himself and waived his right to a jury for the penalty phase. On October 27, 2017, Judge Christine H. Grider sentenced him to 6 concurrent sentences for life. In June 2023, Damas filed a motion for post-conviction relief, seeking a new trial, but in July 2023, Judge Ramiro Manilich denied the motion. As of April 2025, Damas remains in prison, and the next case? It might be even more unsettling. Born on December 14, 1977, in Lake Wales, Florida, Leon Davis Jr. grew up in a community where he was well known for his sense of humor and athletic abilities. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches, he stood out as a prominent figure on his high school basketball team. Despite his size and potential, Davis's life was often marked by frequent run-ins with law enforcement, though he was rarely charged with any serious offenses. In 2002, he and his girlfriend were arrested for attempting to take about $50 worth of items from a Walmart store. Financially, Davis struggled, and in July 2006, he bought a home that came with a debt of over $196,000. A year later, Davis wrote a blog post in which he expressed regret for past mistakes and promised to change his ways. In February 2007, he married his longtime girlfriend, Victoria Campo. On December 7, 2007, Davis entered a gas station along Interstate 4 in Polk County, Florida. There, he came into contact with 33-year-old Praveen Kumar Patel and 55-year-old Dashrith Patel, who were working at the station. Without any apparent reason, Davis pulled out a .38 Dan Wesson revolver and shot both men at close range. He did not take any money, instead fleeing the scene immediately. The incident was caught on surveillance footage, but it took authorities some time to confirm his identity. 6 days later, Davis targeted the Headley Nationwide Insurance Office in Lake Wales, where he encountered 26-year-old Yvonne Bustamante and 23-year-old Juanita Jane Luciano. Luciano was 5.5 months pregnant with a son she had planned to name Michael. Davis forced both women into a back room, demanded they open a safe containing about $900, and then tied them to chairs with duct tape. He set them on fire. The flames caused the tape to burn away, allowing the women to partially free themselves, but they were unable to escape the severe burns. Bustamante passed away on December 18th, and Luciano, along with her unborn child, died on January 8th. Before she passed away, Luciano was able to identify Davis as the person who had harmed her and her co-worker. The reasons behind Davis's actions remain unclear. While he did not theft the gas station, his insurance office suggested that money may have been a motive. However, the extreme nature of the acts leaves room for speculation about whether other factors, possibly psychological, were at play. Was financial pressure alone enough to drive such severe actions, or were there deeper issues involved? The true reasons behind Davis's actions remain uncertain. After Luciano identified Davis and evidence connected him to both incidents, authorities ramped up their search for him. On December 14th, his 30th birthday, Davis turned himself in, bringing an end to a week-long manhunt. Davis's trial began in early 2010, but was interrupted by a mistrial. This was due to testimony from an emergency medical technician who revealed that Bustamante had identified Davis as the person responsible for her injuries before she passed away. The defense was not able to cross-examine this testimony, and it was ultimately ruled inadmissible, leading to the mistrial. The proceedings were tense, with emotional outbursts from victims' family members, including an incident where a family member tried to physically confront Davis, and another threw a purse at his attorney. Both individuals were restrained, and one was banned from future court sessions. In 2011, Davis's retrial resulted in his conviction on several charges, including first-degree charges for the loss of Bustamante and Luciano. He was also convicted for the loss of the Patels. The jury recommended the most severe penalty, and Davis was sentenced accordingly. Additionally, he received a life sentence for the loss of Luciano's unborn child. Davis's appeals were exhausted, and in 2016 the Florida Supreme Court upheld his convictions and the most severe sentences. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments below. Wayne Charles Doty was born on April 12, 1973, in Plant City, Florida. His life has been marked by a series of horrible events that led to his long-term imprisonment. His troubles began in 1996, when, at the age of 23, he was involved in a theft at a manufacturing plant in Plant City. During the theft, Doty shot and caused the passing of Harvey Horn II, a night watchman. This event resulted in Doty receiving a life sentence without the chance of parole. While serving his sentence, Doty's aggressive behavior continued. On May 17, 2011, he was involved in a confrontation with fellow inmate Xavier Rodriguez, a 21-year-old who had been incarcerated for armed theft. The situation escalated when Doty stabbed Rodriguez multiple times and then cut off his air supply using a piece of cloth. Doty later claimed the motive was that Rodriguez had stolen tobacco, a valuable item in the prison, and had disrespected him. The legal system responded quickly to this new act of aggression. Doty pleaded guilty to first-degree premeditated murder, and in 2013 he was handed over capital punishment. However, his case became more complicated due to legal challenges. In 2016, a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the case Hurst v. Florida found that Florida's capital sentencing laws were unconstitutional, which led to a re-examination of Doty's sentence. By September 2024, the Florida Supreme Court reviewed Doty's post-conviction appeal. Despite his defense team's efforts to have his sentence reduced or changed, the court upheld both his conviction and capital sentence. In January 2025, the court denied his motion for post-conviction relief, reaffirming his sentence. A notable aspect of Doty's case came in 2015 when he made an unusual request. He became the first inmate in Florida to ask for the electric chair, preferring it over lethal injection. As of April 2025, Wayne Doty is waiting for his sentence to be carried out at Florida State Prison. Despite several attempts to challenge his fate, his conviction and sentence have remained intact, and it is still uncertain whether Florida's legal system will carry out his sentence or if Doty will continue to seek changes in his situation from behind bars. Next, we turn to the story of Kevin Donald Foster, whose path with the Lords of Chaos led to events that shocked many. Kevin Donald Foster was born in 1977 in Amarillo, Texas. In April 1996, Foster, along with his friends Pete Magnotti and Chris Black, formed a group called Lords of Chaos. The group's aim was to cause disruption and challenge society by committing various illegal acts. At first, their actions involved minor vandalism and setting fires. However, things quickly escalated. On April 20, 1996, they carried out a large act of destruction by using homemade explosives to damage a historic Coca-Cola bottling plant. 6 days later, on April 26th, Foster and Magnotti, driven by personal issues, were involved in an armed theft and carjacking of Emery Lewis, a local diner owner. The most tragic event took place on April 30, 1996. While planning to damage Riverdale High School, the group crossed paths with Mark Schweebs, the respected band director of the school. Schweebs confronted them and told them to leave the area. In an impulsive and devastating act, Foster shot Schweebs. Foster's actions were influenced by a combination of factors. His group had a manifesto called the Declaration of War, which outlined their plan to create fear and disrupt social structures. Additionally, Foster had personal grievances, including feelings of injustice related to incidents like the Waco siege, which contributed to his extreme actions. After the shooting, law enforcement quickly arrested the members of the Lords of Chaos. During the trial, Foster was charged with serious offenses, including first-degree homicide, attempted homicide, arson, and armed theft. The trial moved quickly, given the severity of the situation and the strong evidence against him. Foster was convicted and given the harshest punishment for the shooting of Mark Schweibs. Over the years, Foster's legal team has filed several appeals challenging his conviction and sentence. However, these attempts have been unsuccessful. In November 2023, the United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida upheld Foster's sentence, reaffirming his conviction for the shooting of Mark Schweibs. Now, the next case reveals how a well-planned home invasion shattered the peace of an entire neighborhood. Leonard Patrick Gonzalez, Jr. was born in 1974. On the evening of July 9, 2009, the peaceful community of Pensacola, Florida, was shaken by a horrific event that would become one of the state's most infamous cases. Bird and Melanie Billings, a couple known for their generosity and their commitment to adopting children with special needs, were tragically taken from their home. The person responsible for this act was Leonard Patrick Gonzalez, Jr., a man whose life choices led him down a dark path that would horrify the nation. Before the tragic night, Gonzalez Jr. didn't have a long history of serious offenses, but his actions on July 9, 2009, revealed a side of him capable of carrying out a carefully planned home invasion that escalated into an unimaginable act. On that fateful night, Gonzalez Jr. led a group of people, dressed in black clothing that made them appear like ninjas, to the Billings home. The Billings family, who had 16 children, 9 of whom were at home that night, had a sophisticated security system that included 16 surveillance cameras. However, the intruders managed to disable some of the cameras before entering the house. Once inside, they quickly moved through the home. Bird Billings was shot several times in the master bedroom, while Melanie was shot in the hallway. The assailants took a safe containing valuables before fleeing. Miraculously, the children were physically unharmed, but were left deeply shaken by the traumatic events they had witnessed. What could drive a person to commit such a brutal act against a kind-hearted couple? Investigations revealed that Gonzalez Jr. was aware of the Billings' wealth and believed the safe contained a large sum of money. Struggling with his own financial issues, he saw the home invasion as a quick way to solve his problems. This misguided belief led to a planned and horrific act. The shocking nature of the incident and the prominence of the victims led to an immediate and thorough investigation. Surveillance footage from the Billings home provided vital evidence, capturing the movements of the intruders and leading authorities to Gonzalez Jr. and his accomplices. The trial began in October 2010, and prosecutors presented compelling evidence, including the footage and testimonies from co-conspirators. The defense tried to create doubt about Gonzalez Jr.'s role as the mastermind, but the overwhelming evidence made it clear that he was the one who carried out the act. In February 2011, the jury found Gonzalez Jr. guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and home invasion theft. The seriousness of the incident resulted in capital punishment. As of 2023, Gonzalez Jr. is waiting for his capital punishment to be carried out. Gary Michael Hilton, known as the National Forest Killer, was born on November 22, 1946. Little is known about his early life, making it difficult to understand the factors that may have shaped his later actions. What causes someone to commit such terrible acts in the peaceful surroundings of national forests? The lack of information about his family and psychological background makes it hard to find a clear answer. Between 2007 and 2008, Hilton went on a disturbing spree across Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina, targeting unsuspecting people in national forests. His victims included Meredith Emerson, Cheryl Dunlap, and an elderly couple, John and Irene Bryant. Hilton would approach hikers, pretending to be friendly, before overpowering them. He then held his victims captive and forced them to give personal details, such as bank account information, which he used for his own benefit. Many of his actions ended in the loss of life, and in some cases victims were decapitated to make identification more difficult. The remote nature of national forests made them a perfect place for Hilton, offering cover and a steady stream of people who were easy targets. Hilton's downfall began with the disappearance of Meredith Emerson in Georgia. Evidence, including personal items and surveillance footage, connected him to the case. After his arrest, Hilton struck a deal, agreeing to reveal the location of Emerson's body in exchange for a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 30 years. However, his horrific acts stretched beyond Georgia. In Florida, he was charged with harming Cheryl Dunlap. The evidence in the case was strong, leading to his conviction and the most severe sentence in 2011. Further north, in North Carolina, Hilton admitted taking out the lives of John and Irene Bryant, which led to additional life sentences without parole. As of 2024, Gary Michael Hilton remains in Florida under the highest penalty. His appeals have been denied, with the Florida Supreme Court upholding his sentence in 2021. The next story takes us to a seemingly ordinary man whose hidden actions turned his life, and others, upside down. Michael Lee King was born in 1969. He had no known history of serious legal issues and worked as a plumber. He was seen by most as quiet and unremarkable. However, he had a darker side that would ultimately lead to a devastating incident. On January 17, 2008, everything changed. King took 21-year-old Denise Amber Lee from her home, leaving behind her 2 young sons. Denise, known for her warmth and devotion to her family, was a beloved mother and wife. Her disappearance shocked the peaceful community where she had lived. No one could have imagined that something so horrific could happen in their neighborhood. King forced Denise into his green Camaro and took her to his home, where he held her captive. Despite being restrained and blindfolded, Denise found a way to fight back. In an act of incredible bravery, she managed to grab King's cell phone and dialed 911. During the call, Denise provided crucial information about her taker and the location she was being held. Sadly, authorities were unable to act quickly enough, and despite the vital lead, they couldn't locate her in time. This raised a painful question. Could more effective coordination between emergency services have made a difference? The outcome suggests that there were serious failures in the system that played a role in Denise's tragic fate. King's actions continued to escalate. He drove Denise to a remote location where he shot her. Her body was later found in a shallow grave, a grim reminder of the suffering she endured. The community's grief was deep. How could someone commit such an awful act against a young mother who had been nothing but kind and loving to those around her? The trial that followed was widely followed. The prosecution presented strong evidence, including DNA samples and the chilling 911 call. King's defense tried to argue for a lighter sentence, mentioning his lack of prior convictions and his mental health, but the jury was not swayed. They found King. The verdict, though a relief to many, could not undo the immense pain Denise's family and the community had experienced. In December 2009, King was sentenced to the highest possible penalty. King's actions lead us to another tragic story. In Michael Anthony Tanzi's case, what starts as an everyday meeting quickly turns into a chain of harmful events, showing just how fast a situation can take a dark turn. Michael Anthony Tanzi was born on April 27, 1977. His actions in 2000 brought him into the national spotlight. On that day, 49-year-old Janet Acosta was sitting in her parked van during her lunch break in Miami when Tanzi approached her, claiming to need a cigarette in the time. Taking advantage of the situation, Tansy confronted Acosta, threatening her with a razor blade. He tied her up, gagged her, and took control of her van, driving toward the Florida Keys. During this unsettling journey, Tansy committed serious acts of aggression against Acosta and used her bank card to withdraw money from ATMs. Once he reached an isolated area in Cujo Key, he ended Acosta's life and left her body in the mangroves. He then continued on to Key West to visit some friends. Tansy's motivations for such extreme actions remain unclear. While it's difficult to pinpoint exactly why he did it, his behavior suggests a person in crisis, possibly dealing with personal turmoil or psychological struggles. As Tansy made his way through the Keys, Acosta's friends reported her missing. The police, recognizing her van, managed to track him down and arrested Tansy in Key West. In court, Tansy faced multiple charges. He initially pleaded not guilty, but later changed his plea to guilty. The court found that the situation involved several aggravating factors. As a result, Tansy was sentenced to capital punishment. Would a different defense approach have made a difference in the outcome? Perhaps, but the severity of the incident made it a difficult case to handle. Over the years, Tansy's legal team attempted to appeal his conviction and sentence, but none of their efforts were successful. In March 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida signed a warrant and scheduled Tansy's date for capital punishment to be carried out for April 8, 2025.